Today on the Bass Channel, we're taking a look at the new generation of Tone Hammer and AG series amps from Aguilar. Let's get right into it. First off, what is different about these new series of amps than the originals? Well, if you didn't know, Aguilar now falls under the Korg umbrella along with brands like Darkglass and Spector. That's good news for me and the Bass Channel because I've recently made a couple good friends over at Korg, and that means that we're likely going to be showing more Aguilar products in the near future, which wasn't the case before the acquisition. But more importantly, it's brought a slew of Darkglass inspired features to the back panel of these amplifiers, most notably a second DI out with cab sim. Sticking with the back panel for a moment, you'll see that it's not an exact copy-paste of the Microtube's V2 layout, but the Cab IR Select looks very familiar. You can load 3 different cab sims on board via the USB-C input and the Aguilar cabinet suite. The Aguilar cabinet suite features almost all of the Aguilar cabinet lineup. There is no SL110, but given what else is in there, I don't think anyone's gonna miss it. And of course, if you require a more specific flavor of cabinet, you can also load your own IRs as well. So for this next example, we're gonna cycle through all of the cab sims that the Aguilar cabinet suite has to offer, and for this next tone, it's Josh playing my Gibson SG DFZ, which, if you haven't seen that video, it's right here. It's a Gibson SG bass with the newer Darkglass DFZ fuzz built right in. I'm going with the fuzz for 2 reasons. One, because a fuzz signal is heavily saturated in the mids and the upper frequencies, which is gonna help some of the more subtle nuances between each of the cabinets really shine through and become blatantly obvious. And secondly, because the analytics show that approximately 90% of you are gonna be watching this on your phone anyway, and a clean bass signal, you're not really gonna notice the subtle difference between a 212 and a 210 on a clean bass signal through those little phone speakers. So let's start with the Tone Hammer. Here's the amp set flat and cycling through all of the SL cabs. Now here's that same sample cycling through all of the DB cabs. Just to be thorough, here's all 12 cabinets again through the AG500. Now, just like last time, all of the knobs are set straight up, the deep and bright switches are off, nothing fancy, just what that amp offers with all knobs at noon through all of the cabinets. Some of you might remember that we used to use the original Tonehammer 500 as our studio backline amp a few years ago, and to the best of my memory, this new version retains all of the same tones as the original. I personally don't have much experience with the AG line of amps, but my cousin Will, you remember Will, right? He had the AG 700 for some time and he loved it. Now, I don't know if he's still using it in his current band because lately he and I don't really talk as much as we used to. Either way, the major update to the Tonehammer at least is the new metal knobs. These feel substantially better than the rubbery plastic knobs of the original. Again, I'm not totally sure what the original AG knobs felt like, but these have the same metal knobs as the Tonehammer, so it's either just as good or better than the original because these metal knobs do feel fantastic. Apart from the knobs and a slight facelift to the logos, the front panel controls and features remain unchanged. I did a comparison between the pedal preamp versions of both the Tonehammer and the AG, so we won't spend a whole lot of time covering the differences in this particular video. If you do want to learn more, you can go up here and check that out. But the quick version is the AG's EQ section features two fixed midbands at 300 Hz and 800 Hz. The Tonehammer, on the other hand, has one variable mid-frequency ranging from 180 Hz to 1 kHz. The Tonehammer also features a drive knob, whereas the AG has two push buttons for bright and deep, which are 6 dB shelving boosts at 3 kHz and 250 Hz respectively. Moving back to the rear panel, we've got one speak on out, send and return jacks, which have been moved from the front panel, a 3.5mm auxiliary input accompanied by a headphone out and a mix knob, a ground lift, a tuner out, and of course power. Now, I know some of you out there are eagerly awaiting for a brutally honest, clickbaity review in which I tear these amps apart, but honestly, outside of a couple little nitpick criticisms, there's nothing to tear apart here. Those two nitpicks, by the way, would be the plastic jacks on the back, which, despite feeling pretty sturdy, are still plastic, and the surprising amount of volume from the fan. The fan volume shouldn't be an issue at a gig, but could possibly be an annoyance in a recording session if you did decide to mic a cabinet. Also, it should be noted that these amps aren't cheap. I mean, they're not outrageous boutique prices, but they're also not budget Chinese-made digital amps designed to give you every mediocre tone under the sun. These kind of do one thing and do it well. Okay, one thing is a bit of an understatement, but I think you know what I mean. There's no built-in effects or compression or anything like that, just a good solid tone in a lightweight package. On that note, taking a closer look at the back shows two interesting things. First, it's extremely refreshing to not see Made in China printed here. I know we all have opinions on that, so feel free to unload them down below in the comments. Secondly, and more importantly, you'll notice that while both of these amps have 500 in the name, signifying of course 500 watts, you'll see that the max power consumption is 650 watts. I kind of forgot about this until recently, but I recently remembered having a conversation with Dave Boonshoft at NAMM a few years back, and he talked about how Aguilar rates their amps at their RMS power, not their peak power. And if you don't know what that means, Colin Scott does a much better job explaining all of that than I ever possibly could. So again, after this video, if you are curious of RMS versus peak, go check out his video up there. That just about wraps up the new generation of Aguilar amps. Personally, I think these new features make these amps miles above what they were. The ability to use and load cab sims is easily my favorite feature. It just makes everything so much simpler in a live and recording setting that it's amazing to me that it's not standard practice yet. So let me know what you think down below. Do you prefer the tone hammer, or is the AG more your speed? Or are you an original Aguilar hipster who thinks that the first line of these amps sounded better than the current line? Let me know down below in the comments, because believe it or not, I read them all. So don't forget to dislike and unsubscribe, and until next time, be safe, and I'll see you later.